to episode 320 of Late Night Linux, recorded on the 10th of February 2025. I'm Joe, and with me are Phelim.
Evening.
And Graham.
Hello.
Yes, Will is away, I think, for work, so you're stuck with us just for this episode, though.
Are you sure he doesn't have the shits?
Let's do some news then. And there's been a big drama around Rust in the Linux kernel. First up, it was Christoph Hellwig describing Rust in the kernel as a cancer, which had shades of Bulmer, of course. And then there was a bit of drama on the mailing list with Hector Martin, who's the Asahi lead. And then eventually Hector stepped down as the Apple Silicon maintainer. But then someone new stepped up, so that was fine. But before that, Torvalds said to Hector Martin, maybe the problem is you. It's all been a confusing mess.
I thought that was a Taylor Swift reference then, but it's not, is it?
Don't mention Taylor. She got booed yesterday.
I know. Oh, I'm sorry, Joe.
I know. I felt really bad for her.
I thought the show would be cancelled because of this.
I'm sure she can wipe away her tears with $1,000 bills.
So I guess we've got to make a huge caveat in that we don't know enough about C or Rust or kernel development, probably to make properly coherent comments on what's going on. But
that's not going to stop us, though.
No, it's not.
Yeah, so I don't think we can get into the technicalities of this, but it's not really necessarily a technical issue, is it? This is clearly a people issue.
I guess so, but the thing is that the Linux kernel is written in C and always has been, and that's the way that everybody understands it, and everybody understands, for better or worse, I've done quite a bit of C development in the past, and as a complete amateur, dealing with memory allocation and deallocation in C is a nightmare. Now, I know the Linux kernel developers have solved that problem. They've done an incredible job. And maybe they're used to solving that problem in the world of C. So in comes Rust, I guess, as the new kid on the block, the new C on the block. So I can understand perhaps their reticence to coexist with Rust code. Having said that, new things come and people need to be adaptable and they need to be welcoming. I don't know, open-minded. So this seems to be where the conflict is coming from, is it?
Well, I think it does seem the fact that the C code in this case was meant to adapt to work with the Rust. And I think that's where Christoph Hellwig's real problem is with it, is the fact that he says, if you want to interact with this large project, we're all written in C, you should manage those bits of the side of it. And I can kind of see his point. I mean, obviously, if we want new developers to come in, they're not necessarily going to learn old languages. But equally, with a project like the kernel, you don't want the latest fad to be there for 5 years and then suddenly change as well. So I think there's a bit of a both sides to this, which is a bit of a cop-out. But with things so important as a kernel, I think you really have to have people who are willing to sort of get on with each other and work towards a common goal. And I think that might be the result, that I just think people with whatever personalities they had didn't get along very well.
Yeah. And it works. I mean, the Linux kernel works.
And has done for 30 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest thing. It's like, me as an admin of a system, I overly don't care as long as it does what it says it should do. And what I really want to do is be able to depend on it in the future as well. And whatever gets us there will be great.
But I think maybe the project needs to have a way of dealing with new things, like new programming languages and new programming paradigms, if that's the term, and a new generation of developers in a way that is kind of maybe not including things into the main branch of the kernel, but in a way that allows people to experiment with new ideas and prove over a long period of time, perhaps in a side channel, that things like this are meant to stay and worth the sacrifice or worth the re-education of using something like Rust.
Yeah, I think the funny comment by Linus was the fact that, lots of people are declaring Rust in the kernel dead. He says it's only been there for about 2 years. I mean, that's like so little in the terms of the lifespan of the project that, yeah, it's going to take a while to work these things out, I think.
You can kind of see their argument, though. Like we said, it is this really old project, it's really well established, and it's always been in C. But then how are you going to attract younger people like Hector, who I think is like 30-ish maybe, which is relatively young compared to the greybeards that are doing most of the kernel development. And we've talked about this so many times before that those people are going to age out and retire and all the rest of it. And what's going to happen? You need to get new blood in. And if that means accepting modern languages like Rust, maybe you have to do that.
I think the other test of this is the fact that we want kernel developers who are going to be in for the fight of getting these things hard won, because it does feel that with everybody sort of taking FOSS things for granted these days, that fight against a big system maybe isn't as strong in some people. I don't know.
Well, in Hector's case, I don't think that he came out of this looking very good, to be honest. Like shouting about it on social media and then deleting his Mastodon account. It doesn't strike you as professional, does it?
No, not overly. And, this is the kernel again. It's got to be the best project out there because it's the thing that's running everything.
I think it's okay that we're not rushing into anything, and we need to find a way of being open to new projects, but at the same time, we need to be very conservative about adopting them. And everybody needs to understand that and be sensitive to that.
Something I saw quite a lot of breathless coverage about was Facebook blocking links to Distrowatch. I saw it reported as, Facebook is blocking any mention of Linux, but I couldn't find any evidence of that. I think somehow Distrowatch got on their list of spam sites, and so automated tools were stopping people posting it and disabling accounts of people who tried repeatedly. But I don't think it's some big conspiracy for Meta and Facebook to be against Linux.
I saw some of the same stories and thought exactly the same thing when I started to go look for a little bit of evidence. It didn't take long before people saying, no, this has just been blown out of all proportion after a few people complained about some links missing. Although, it's great to have Distrowatch in the conversation and people analysing what Distrowatch actually is and what it means for Linux these days.
And what it isn't and what it doesn't mean for Linux.
Wow. Jesus, get you two.
Hey, no, I mean, it's been a great site over the years, but,
You say it isn't? No.
It's not a list of the most popular Linux distributions.
It's just a list of Linux distributions. And that serves a purpose, and that's fine. But I think people do take it a bit too seriously with, MX Linux is the most popular Linux distro. It's more popular than Ubuntu because it's higher on Distrowatch.
Also, to make a comment on this, I don't think distributions help themselves either. All the main distributions don't actually publish any kind of user numbers, do they? So that would be nice if they did.
Wouldn't that be great? Xorg and FreeDesktop and Alpine Linux, among other projects, are scratching around looking for hosting, all thanks to the end of Equinix Metal. Of course, Equinix bought Packet.net and then eventually shut down that service, but they were donating servers to a lot of projects who are now just completely fucked, basically.
No, it's fine. They've got 2 months to sort it out.
Well, people are already donating money and stuff, so maybe that is the lesson here. Don't rely on other companies. Try and rely on the community to fund you so that you can pay for your own servers.
Yeah, it would be nice to see more self-funded stuff like this. I know it's obviously hard. I know dealing with money is a pain, but in the long run, I think it's a better way of doing things. And at the end of this, I see that Jason Donenfeld actually chimed in to say that WireGuard is also desperate. So I contributed just a second ago because, like most people, I wouldn't have known that he was in trouble for cash. Like, we need to get better at whinging and rattling the donation bowl.
Definitely. Well, we saw it with KDE, didn't we?
Yeah.
And that seemed to have worked. And Thunderbird were trailblazers there. I think absolutely people should be much more upfront about that stuff. Okay, this episode is sponsored by Tailscale. Go to tailscale.com/LNL. Tailscale is the easiest way to connect devices and services to each other, wherever they are. Everyone these days has a VPN as a sponsor, but Tailscale isn't like those. This isn't about hiding your browsing habits from coffee shop owners, and it's not about watching Netflix in another country. Tailscale is a proper VPN for connecting your devices securely. It's great for companies, and it's great for self-hosters. Tailscale gives you secure remote access to any resource anywhere in the world, whether that's databases, servers, Kubernetes, on-prem boxes, virtual private clouds, desktop PCs, 3D printers, or offsite backups in your friend's garage. Connect anything and everything you want, wherever it is, and get started in minutes. Tailscale's personal plan will always be free, so support the show and try Tailscale out for free today. You'll get up to 100 devices and 3 users for free at tailscale.com/LNL with no credit card required. That's tailscale.com/LNL. Something that looks quite official but is quite clearly not. EU OS for the public sector. Community-led proof of concept for a free operating system for the EU public sector. What is EU OS? EU OS is a proof of concept for the deployment of a Fedora-based Linux operating system with a KDE Plasma desktop environment in a typical public sector organization. So this must be really conflicting for you, this idea.
It is. Why are we using Fedora? That's American. We should be using a good EU distro.
There are some distros from the EU, aren't there? Like, what about Mageia or whatever? Is that still a thing?
Technically, I was going to say Ubuntu, but no, that's Isle of Man or something, isn't it?
It spent most of its life being developed in the EU. Maybe Neon?
Oh, we're going to have to say OpenSUSE now.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, of course. The one that always manages to wash your memories of it after you've mentioned it.
We're going to piss a lot of people off with that. But yeah, I can't believe I didn't immediately think of it. But yeah, why isn't it based on that?
I have no idea. Who wrote this? This can't be real.
Robert Hyman wrote it. But when I first saw it, it looked quite official, but then I suddenly realized, no, hang on. This is definitely not official. This is just someone's bright idea. But I just thought it'd be funny to troll you with Phelim. So,
in fairness, it's a bright idea from a guy who's apparently working in computer science and education and is working in Brussels on data protection policy. So maybe it's not that far-fetched.
Stranger things have happened. The Pebble operating system has been open sourced, and the fella who came up with the Pebble in the first place and then sold it to Fitbit, who were then bought by Google, and then Google obviously just killed the Pebble, he's bringing it back, or at least something very similar to a Pebble.
I never had a Pebble. I know some people who backed it and got their watches and really loved them, and they're good people, so I think this is good news, and I kind of wish I had a Pebble.
I'm actually surprised that you never had a Pebble.
Were you just a Garmin man from the start?
No, I probably just didn't have any money at the time. It was probably back when we did Linux Voice.
Well, it was 2012 to 2016 by the looks of things. So, yeah, I think that was when you were a poor magazine editor.
Yeah. But, I mean, they're still going, and everything that I've read about, they seem great, but it's difficult having not used one. I love the idea of an open source watch platform.
Well, I briefly used one of the original Pebbles, but it was quite buggy, I found. And it was quite long in the tooth by the time I got it. But I did quite enjoy it. But I think the world has moved on, haven't they, to Apple Watches and Garmin's and stuff. So it seems like this will be pretty niche. But it is still interesting to me that they're starting from an open source project now. So I really hope that they can keep it as open source as possible.
Yeah, I agree. And I think there is a lot of potential for something open source. I mean, Garmin has its own kind of store, and it's just littered with $2.99 and $3.99 watch faces done in a Star Trek theme. There are a few open source watch faces, and when there are, it's brilliant to be able to change the few things you may not like about something, and it'd be great to be able to do that with the entire watch OS.
I don't see the fascination in a smartwatch, but if I was going to get one, it would have to be open source, I think.
Really? No way.
I know. Who would have thought? It's hard to beat my Casio that's on my wrist that costs 60 quid and will last forever until probably I lose my hand in a terrible accident in the garden or something, because it's solar powered and it just lasts forever. Charging a watch, no.
I think we have to give a little bit of credit to Google, even though, is it Eric Majikovsky? He's obviously been hassling Google to release the source code, but Eric has obviously connected with some real human beings there that have been able to make it happen, which can't be a simple task considering how many projects Google retires without opening the source. So well done, Eric, and well done whoever at Google Eric's been speaking to make this happen.
Yeah, definitely.
Well done for selling this company and then getting them to open source it afterwards as well. Ta-da!
Indeed.
4D chess, baby.
Well, that's the thing. He sold Beeper, one of his startups, to Automatic, the WordPress company. But now he's got enough money to do the Pebble thing again, but properly this time. Independently, no VC bullshit. that he has to deal with, no having to sell out to Google and all the rest of it. So maybe, just maybe, this is going to turn out to be a real success. Fingers crossed. UK orders Apple to let it spy on users' encrypted accounts. This is an article from the Washington Post, which it turns out you haven't read, Phelim, because the archive.is link that I put in the show notes to get around the paywall didn't work for you.
No, but they have successfully installed Nginx, which is good to know.
Right. Yes. Excellent. So the long and the short of this is the UK government have used a law to quietly demand that Apple backdoors its end-to-end encryption for its backups, which is not on by default by the sound of things. So iCloud backups aren't end-to-end encrypted unless you specifically choose to do that.
But you wouldn't, because you've got nothing to hide.
Yeah, of course. But someone, presumably within Apple, has leaked this to the press, even though I think it's illegal for them to do that. This is just fucking shit, man. This is the UK government not reading the room, basically. Like, even in America, their government came out relatively recently saying, use end-to-end encryption. Don't use texts and phone calls. Use something like Signal, because we can't trust the phone networks anymore because they might have been exploited by foreign nation states.
While on the other hand, building massive data centers in the middle of Utah and storing every piece of data for their quantum decrypting machines. But yes.
This is a dangerous precedent because it's not just for UK users either. The UK government has ordered Apple to just give them a backdoor into anyone's account.
It's a terrible fucking idea. But I'm finding it really hard to have any sympathy for the world right at the moment. So let them have everything. Let them access everything. Let nothing be provable. Let's all live in anarchy. Fuck it.
Great attitude.
Or install Lineage. I mean, you could also do that.
Of course you could do that, yes. This is just not going to end well. Because it makes you wonder, like, if they're demanding this of Apple, who else are they demanding it of?
Oh, they're absolutely demanding it of everybody. I mean, it is technically their job as a security service to do these types of things, but we don't often think of it like that. We often think of, well, obviously they just track bad guys, right? Well, no.
A bit of good news. F-Droid awarded Open Technology Fund's FOSS Sustainability Grant. You put this in, Phelim.
Yeah, this is absolutely brilliant. And it's lovely to see a proper FOSS project get a decent actual amount of cash, not 10 grand spread over 15 payments and a decade like those wondrous people were trying to pretend they were good at doing. This is an actual fucking decent amount of cash for projects that might allow it to do some bloody good with it. So yeah, this is great. Happy days. $396,044. That's got to be 400,000 something else. Euros, maybe? I think so, yeah. I think they're pretty close to each other, all right. That sounds about right.
Right. That's a lot of money.
Yeah, it's a useful amount of money. I mean, want to do proper things, you need to have proper money, and this is proper money. Next year, maybe I should give $1 million, but I mean, I'm just putting that out there, like, you know.
Well, it's great to see because F-Droid is really important, I think. A properly open source app store that isn't controlled by Google.
And do you know what it also doesn't do? It doesn't force updates down the pipe at you that are at the behest of some government, which is nice.
Indeed. So excellent news. Okay, this episode is sponsored by Entroware. Go to entroware.com. Entroware sells computers with Ubuntu and Ubuntu Mate pre-installed. They've got a range of desktops, laptops, and servers, and most parts are configurable, so you can pick the CPU, RAM, and storage that's right for you. If you can't find exactly what you want, then do contact them and they'll work with you on a bespoke solution that's perfect for your needs. They ship to the UK, Republic of Ireland, France, Germany, Italy, and Spain. And if you do buy one of their machines, there's a little drop down at checkout and you can select Late Night Linux so they'll know that we sent you. So go to entroware.com for all your Linux computing needs. On to a bit of admin then. First of all, thank you everyone who supports us with PayPal and Patreon. We really do appreciate that. If you want to join those people, you can go to latenightlinux.com/support. And remember that for various amounts on Patreon, you can get an advert-free RSS feed of either just this show or all the shows in the Late Night Linux family. And you even get some episodes early. And if you want to get in contact, you can email show@latenightlinux.com. This is an interesting one. Framework have released a RISC-V board for their laptops. Now, they released this to developers, I think last year, but now it seems to be on general sale for $199. I mean, I'm not going to buy this and put this in my framework. As much as it'd be interesting to have a RISC-V board, it's pretty underpowered and not really production ready. But you can also buy just the chassis with the screen and the keyboard and the battery and everything and put this in there. And I think it comes to about $500 total, which is very expensive for the performance you're going to get. But if you wanted something to tinker with RISC-V, I think it's cool. And it's good to kind of push the whole ecosystem forward.
Yeah. And actually, did we mention this? But at the Ubuntu Summit last year, the Framework CEO, Nirav Patel, he did a lightning talk swapping an x86 mainboard for a RISC-V mainboard in his Framework laptop in 5 minutes, which was pretty impressive.
No way.
So you could get both and experiment with the RISC-V one, on a rainy weekend.
Ah, see, that's quite cool. I do like the sound of that. And to be honest, I'd love to actually see a performance benchmark of my current laptop, which I use every now and again, against one of these, because it's so old that it might actually be in the same range of usefulness.
I don't know about that. I think these RISC-V boards are still pretty low power in terms of compute.
Really? Oh.
Yeah, I mean, they're improving all the time, but I don't think this particular one is going to give you very good performance. This is really just for developers and early adopters and stuff. It's for people who want to test their software, essentially.
That fairly nice looking laptop chassis, though, might be quite interesting to slot other stuff into. Pi 5, just saying.
Why would you do that? That's ridiculous.
If only to troll you, Joe. Just honestly, I would.
Well, I'm doing the ultimate troll of you by recording this very episode on my N100 box.
Unexplained fires are a matter for the courts.
Well, if this episode doesn't make it to where no one ever hears this, then you'll know why. But I have already recorded one episode of a different show on this, and it was fine. It's quieter, it's cooler, it's just better. And I tell you what, I would not dare record on a Raspberry Pi. No way. So what does that tell you?
Nothing.
All right. Flow is an animated movie about a cat, which is nominated for an Oscar. Okay, that's not very interesting. What's interesting is that it was made completely with Blender. This is so cool.
Yeah, this is amazing. I mean, it's always amazing. Blender is just such an incredible project. Whenever we mention it, it's just so capable. I can't believe we're at a stage where professional, incredible looking movies are created with open source 3D modeling and rendering software.
And as the name suggests, Flow, there's a lot of water in this movie. And that's not necessarily an easy thing to do in animation software.
Yeah, and I thought it was quite cool the way... I don't know how to pronounce the guy's name, but the guy who Glintz or something like that. Yeah, Glintz Zabaldis?
Gintz, I think.
Okay, I'm going to take your word for it. I think I was seeing an L there every time I looked at that name. He was able to sort of animate basic scenes the way he wanted to using the real-time renderer from Blender called Eevee. And then he was able to get riggers who are, I think they're people who animate stuff and how limbs bend and all that sort of thing, and artists to come in later on to add extra scenes to the footage and tidy it all up, which I thought was so cool, because then you have somebody who is, somewhat technical, but can get the story out there, and then later on get the artistic people to come in and make it look really like it should. That's a fantastic way to work.
All right, you've not even got a link for this, Phelim. You've just said Plasma 6.3 is out tomorrow.
Well, I could give you the link. It's not the link that's public yet, but I guessed it based on the 6.2 release. So I actually hit that link and I could see images in there already, just not the HTML. So I'm assuming that it's going to be that. Maybe I'll give it to you and you can stick it in the show notes and see if we get it right. It'll be like late night Linux gambling.
And are you really excited for this then?
Oh yeah, there's loads of this. I mean, we've covered some of it in the beta pre-release and stuff, and Nate obviously has 2 articles on it already coming up to this. They've already even started talking about 6.4, but some really nice features in this one. I just can't wait for it to come out, to be honest, and give it a good spin, because I think there's a few fixes and there's a lot of things for people with NVIDIA drivers and stuff like that. It's going to make vast improvements to everybody, I think. A lot of bug fixes went in.
Right, well, Maybe there'll be a link in the show notes. Maybe it won't work. We'll have to see. Right, well, we better get out of here then. We'll be back next week when there'll be some more of those what-if questions and a voice of the masses. But until then, I've been Joe.
I've been Phelim.
And I've been Graham.
See you later.